Yemeni security forces identified the suspect in the killing of the United Nations official in Taz government. Terrorism expert tells Yemen Today TV the U.S. should have listened to the President Saleh's early warnings of the Houthi-Iranian bond. The suffering of displaced people in Yemen aggravates amid lack of government intervention. Good evening. Welcome to Yemen Today TV. I am Abir Ali and you're watching the English news. The United States condemned the killing of World Food Program staff member in Yemen. Ambassador Weigand expressed his deepest condolences to the family of the deceased. Sources mentioned that the official was killed while he was having lunch in a restaurant. Earlier, the World Food Program chef issued a statement confirming that their staff member was shot and killed by unknown gunmen. Rashad Al-Alimi made a phone call to the Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres. Al-Alimi expressed his sincere condolences to the Secretary General of the United Nations on the tragic killing of the head of the World Food Program in Taz City. The two sides discussed also latest developments in Yemen, especially the current Houthi escalation, which threatens to undermine all peace efforts. Yemen security forces said they arrested the suspect in the killing of the World Food Program. Representative in Taz, the tragic accident happened yesterday in a Turba district when unknown gunman riding a motorbike shot the UN official while he was lunching in one restaurant in the area. This report has more.
Yesterday, a terrible accident has took place in Yemen, where gunmen shot and killed the head of one of the World Food Programme's offices in southwestern Yemen. However, no militant group immediately claimed responsibility for the attack. In a statement, World Food Programme said that Muayyad al-Humaydi, a Jordanian, was shot by gunmen in the city of Taz, not long after he arrived in the country to assume the role as head of its office in that city. It added he died shortly after reaching the hospital. According to a statement issued by a local security committee, Al-Humaydi was shot by two armed attackers on a motorbike, and no further information was given. Both the Houthis and the government condemned the attack in statements on Friday, and neither side accused anyone of being behind the killing. A senior Yemeni security official from the government side said an investigation was underway. Yemen's conflict has created one of the worst humanitarian crises, and over the years turned it into a regional proxy war between Saudi Arabia and Iran. More than 150,000 people, including fighters and civilians, have been killed. Yemen's civil war began in 2014 when the Houthi militia took control of Yemen's capital and largest city, Sana'a, demanding a new government. Since then, Yemen became no safe place for its citizens to live in. The Houthi militia has expanded its control to much of the country. They have violated the laws of war, including indiscriminately shelling civilians, laying anti-personnel landmines, impeding humanitarian supplies, arbitrarily detaining individuals, committing acts of torture, and recruiting child soldiers. Parties to the conflict continued to harass, threaten, arbitrarily detain, and prosecute individuals for peacefully exercising their lives. Yemeni people are suffering in all aspects. The international community is aware of the Yemeni situation, yet no actions are being taken to alleviate the suffering that has been going on for 9 years now.
The United Nations announced the start of unloading oil from the decay sulfur tanker. Head of the humanitarian project at the Dutch organization said that it is great to see how the international community has worked so hard to prevent a major environmental disaster in Yemen. It's noteworthy that the replacement tanker, Nautica, has arrived on Monday at the sulfur oil tanker site in preparation for the direct withdrawal of the abandoned sulfur oil tanker.
It's been a very good day today. Now we can move forward with our plan to offload the oil off the FSO Sapphire. By the end of this week, we should be able to start seeing the first oil being pumped into this vessel to secure it for the first time in 8 years and no longer represent a threat.
The U.S. terrorism expert Adrian Calamel said that the bonds between the Houthis and Iran are not recent but go back to the 80s. Adrian added that Washington should have taken into consideration the early warnings of the former President Ali Abdullah Saleh of the threat of such Houthi-Iranian connection. Adrian's statement came during an explosive interview with the Yemen Today TV in the weekly program The Third Dimension.
So,
right.
if I may step in, Adrian, here, as you were talking about the long history bonds between Houthis and Iran, okay, you still remember the first wars from 2004 to 2010 when President Saleh was there. And the question is, President Saleh used to tell US officials that Houthis are linked to Iran hundreds of times, but his calls were undermined by American policymakers. Okay, how do you interpret this?
Well, the problem is one, American foreign policy has been notoriously inconsistent. Now, in 2004, I can't remember, but if the Houthis were on the foreign terrorist organization list, I don't believe they were at that point. They absolutely should have been listening to Saleh because they are connected. I will say that our agencies, the CIA especially, in many cases has become politicized, and this hurts national security and intelligence. So I think this is just maybe a failure on our intelligence community, a failure to listen, and really hubris not to listen to a leader who is in that country and knows this.
Yeah.
Displaced people in Abdallah Governorate continue to suffer amid lack of government and international aid agencies and neglect. This report has more details.
The displaced people of Abdallah have been suffering since the Houthi militia caused their displacement, and they complain of the failure of government agencies and international humanitarian organizations. This displaced woman, Aisha Nasser, looks after her children in Abdallah. They suffer from hunger, poverty, and the failure of government agencies to provide anything for them. The displacement camps lack the most basic necessities of life, and the suffering of the people doubles in winter and it's bitter cold. The displaced people also suffer from many diseases, especially among children and women. We suffer from hunger. We drowned in these camps due to rains. We have no water and we have many diseases. We call on the government to help and save us.
I
am displaced from Abdallah. I suffer from brain tumor. I asked for help because I need surgery, but no one from the concerned authorities helped me. I have a family and I need to provide for them.
Recent statistics indicate that more than 8,700 families have been displaced in Abdallah. They lack shelter, housing, food, and medicine since the year 2019. The availability of services has become an urgent need to provide assistance and save them from this difficult situation.
We suffer from the severe heat in summer and heavy rains in winter. We receive support for only 3 months a year. We don't have any of the basic necessities or any medical support.
More than 8,000 displaced families have been forcibly displaced by the Houthi militia. For years, these people have been suffering after humanitarian organizations and government agencies abandoned them.
Government forces shot down a Houthi attack drone inside the governorate. Field sources said that the air defenses shot down a drone loaded with missiles launched by the Houthi militia towards the government forces' sites. This comes in light of the recent escalation by the Houthi militia against the government forces on the number of fronts. Locals in Marib Governorate conducted the funeral of 3 children killed in one Houthi mine explosion. From time to time, civilian casualties fall due to the mines planted by the Houthi militia. Climate change has exacerbated the suffering of displaced people in Yemen nationwide. During summer, they suffer from heat waves. In winter, they are plagued by rains and flooding. This report has more.
Over 4.5 million Yemenis, or 14% of the population, have been forced to flee their homes because of the crisis. Most of them have been displaced multiple times over a number of years. 9 years of war have driven more than 4.5 million people from their homes, and 21.6 million are in dire need of humanitarian assistance and protection services. Yemen remains among the top 6 largest internal displacement in the world. Many families are in continuous search of safety after the terrorist Houthi group made them live through periods of siege, abuse and repression with various kinds of heavy and light weapons. They did not find anything but destruction, so they left their homes. These families endure the hardships of life and the requirements of living in order to provide a stable life for their children within different displacement camps, where food is not always available and finding water has become costly and requires traveling long distances. Many families were left to struggle with the bitterness of living inside displacement camps without relief aid or a proper shelter, especially with the heat waves that storm the camps and penetrate the tents of the displaced, leading to the deterioration of the health of the displaced people, especially elders and children, as their bodies cannot bear the heat waves that reached its peak during the summer. The lack of basic needs compounds the suffering of the displaced in the camps. Some residents spend their days searching for places to protect them from the summer heat, while during the winter, flooding and heavy rains destroyed the tents of the displaced as well, and they begin to sleep on the ground and on the streets as their tents get destroyed by the rains. At the same time, promises remained on paper, and dozens of families remained in suffering without any relief aid or shelter to extract them from the homelessness they are living in. And none of the governmental agencies or international organizations have turned around or showed any interest to their suffering.
Coming up in the news. Teachers in Houthi-controlled areas go on strike over their unpaid salaries.
Stands out for its richness, complexity, and distinctiveness. Coffee cuppers seem to breathe through their very souls with every sip. They appreciate the journey of the seed, dating back to when it was just an idea in the farmer's mind, through to its journey into their cup. There are various forms of preparation, followed with almost ritualistic precision. Yemeni coffee, an endless story of discovery.
Welcome back. The head of the Presidential Council, Rashad Al-Alimi, warned the Houthi militia of pushing the country back to the square of violence. Al-Alimi remarks followed the current Houthi escalation in different fronts, which undermine peace efforts. This report has more.
According to official media, Yemen's Presidential Leadership Council advised the Houthi militia against further military escalation and emphasized the importance of ensuring adequate fuel supply to operate the power infrastructure. A meeting of the Presidential Council was presided over by Rashad Al-Alimi, who spoke on current events and political initiatives to promote peace and stability. The state media indicated that the council welcomed the start of flights from Al Ghaida Airport, thanking Saudi Arabia for repairing the facility and emphasizing its good impact on investment and travel. They also stressed that resuming flights to the airport will boost investment and ease traveler hardship. The gathering focused on the economic issues confronting Aden, the temporary capital, and the freed governorates. The Presidential Council emphasized the necessity of guaranteeing the adequate fuel supply to operate the electric grid and strengthening the role of oversight bodies in fixing the imbalances that impact this critical sector. They reaffirmed the Council's and the government's commitment to improving monetary and financial stability and the state's access to public resources through comprehensive reforms. In addition, the Council discussed recent regional and international developments concerning the renewal of the ceasefire. According to official sources, the Council emphasized the significance of stopping the Houthi coup and restoring state institutions, as well as security, stability, and growth. The Presidential Council warned the Houthi militia against continuing its human rights violations and military operations. The Council urged the international community to address the Houthi militia's inflexibility, applauding the people's desire to construct a modern state that includes all Yemenis. It reaffirmed its commitment to relieve human suffering and meeting its commitments to the Yemeni people, clearing the ground for domestic security and peace to be achieved. After years of pain and hardship, Alimi congratulated the citizens of Al-Mahra on the opening of flights through Al-Ghaida International Airport as the fourth airport in the liberated governorates. The council's chairman applauded Saudi Arabia's efforts that contribute to this accomplishment, as the first Yemen Airways jets arrived at the airport, which was renovated by the Saudi Development and Reconstruction Program for Yemen. The opening was attended by the Minister of Transport and numerous officials. The minister emphasized the importance of running domestic flights at Al-Ghaida Airport, noting that the next stage will be to launch international flights, which will ease citizen travel and encourage commercial and tourism activity.
Mosque of Fatima district west of the Mara Governorate witnessed a great reluctance from the worshippers. This came as a result of the Houthi militia's preachers continuing to spread extremism and hatred among the citizens, and the closure of a number of district's mosques. Local sources told Yemen Today that more than 16 mosques of the Fatima district in Damar witnessed a great reluctance from the worshippers of the district. With the start of school year in the Houthi-controlled areas today, teachers went on strike. According to the teachers' union, the strike comes as a protest against the Houthi looting and suspension of the teachers' salaries. The following report has more.
The Teachers Club in the hijacked capital Sana'a announced that it will start a full and comprehensive strike against the Houthis' confiscation and looting of educators' salaries for the 8th year in a row. The Houthi militia looted teachers' entitlements in full view of everyone, as they seized the cash incentives provided by the United Nations Children's Fund and confiscated them for their affiliated leaders within the Ministry of Education. The Houthis confiscated the revenues of the so-called Teacher Support Fund, which they established in 2019, and set a fixed percentage of income for it from several revenue sectors. According to the decision to establish the fund from which the teacher didn't receive anything, the militia allocated 2 riyals of the value of petrol or diesel entering the port of Hodeida, 4%, and 1% of the customs duties for goods and merchandise at the main ports. Tens of billions of dollars are plundered by the Houthis every month, claiming that it is the percentage that goes to the Teacher Support Fund. However, the truth is that it goes to finance Houthi recruitment operations and combat fronts, and to provide part of it as salaries and operating expenses for their sectarian abuse in what they call summer centers. 166,443 male and female teachers in 13 governorates under the control of the militia don't receive even part from the fund originally designated to support them and pay their salaries, and whose revenues are deducted from the livelihood of the simple citizen, and those of them who refuse to work on the conditions of the militia, which are working without payment, having their job grade confiscated and replaced with another loyal to the militia. The areas controlled by the Houthi militia are witnessing a warning of the outbreak of a massive revolution due to hunger and starvation of citizens, cutting off their salaries and sources of livelihood in return for the inflation of the militia leaders' wealth.
Here is a reminder of the main headlines. Yemeni security forces identified the suspect in the killing of the United Nations official in Taz Governorate. Terrorism expert tells Yemen Today TV the U.S. should have listened to President Saleh's earlier warnings of the Houthi-Iranian bond. The suffering of displaced people in Yemen aggravates amid lack of government intervention. This is the end of the news. It was Abir Ali, and thank you for watching.